The chapel was empty. It always was at 3 a.m. But tonight someone had requested it. Emily Dawson sat in the front pew of Redmont Federal Correctional Facility's chapel, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the wooden cross hanging above the altar. She had been summoned here by the warden himself, an unusual request that broke every protocol she knew. "You're religious, aren't you, Dawson?" Warden Greaves had asked her 2 hours earlier, standing outside her cell with an expression she couldn't read. I attend services, sir." "Good. Because we have a situation. An inmate has made a final request before execution. She wants to see the Virgin Mary. And you're the closest thing we've got." Emily's breath caught. "Sir, I don't understand." Cell block D, death row. Inmate 4721. Maria Santos. Execution scheduled for 6 a.m. She claims she won't walk to the chamber unless the Virgin Mary visits her first. The prison chaplain is sick. You're going to put on a costume and convince her you're divine intervention. The words hung in the air like a death sentence of their own. Now Emily sat in the chapel waiting. A guard had brought her a blue robe and a white veil, cheap fabric that smelled of mothballs and desperation. The costume lay on the pew beside her like a wound. She had been in Redmont for 8 months. 8 months of silence. 8 months of learning that survival meant becoming invisible, that speaking meant becoming a target. She had kept her head down, her mouth shut, her soul locked away somewhere even she couldn't reach anymore. But this was different. This was someone's last moments on earth. The chapel door opened. Warden Greaves entered, followed by Chaplain Morrison, who apparently wasn't too sick to oversee this grotesque theater, and a stone-faced guard Emily recognized as Officer Reeves. "Put it on," Greaves said, gesturing to the costume. Emily's hands trembled as she lifted the blue robe. "Sir, this is wrong. I can't pretend to be." "You can and you will." Maria Santos murdered 3 people in cold blood. She's getting a last request she doesn't deserve. You're making it happen. Consider it a service to the state. But if she realizes I'm not, she's scheduled to die in 3 hours. What's she going to do? File a complaint. Greaves' voice was ice. Emily slipped the robe over her prison uniform. The fabric felt like blasphemy against her skin. The veil came next, covering her hair, casting shadows across her face. When she looked at her reflection in the chapel's small mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a ghost. Perhaps that was appropriate. "Listen carefully," Chaplain Morrison said, stepping forward. His breath smelled of coffee and something sour. "Maria Santos is deeply religious, or she was before she killed those people. She's been praying nonstop for the past week. She's fragile, delusional, probably hallucinating from stress. You don't need to say much. Just stand there, look serene, maybe say a blessing. Let her believe what she needs to believe. What if she asks me questions? Keep it vague. Religious platitudes. You've heard enough sermons by now." Officer Reeves moved closer, her voice low and sharp. "And Dawson? This stays between us. You tell anyone about this little arrangement, and your parole hearing gets very complicated. Understand?" Emily understood. She understood that she was a prop in someone else's final scene. She understood that the prison had just made her complicit in something she couldn't name but felt in her bones was deeply, fundamentally wrong. They walked through the prison in silence. The corridors of Redmont at night were different from the daytime chaos. Quieter, darker, filled with the sound of breathing and the occasional cry from behind steel doors. Emily's footsteps echoed against the concrete, each step taking her further from whatever person she used to be. Death row was in a separate wing. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each door locking behind them with a finality that made Emily's chest tight. The air here was different too, heavier like grief had weight. Maria Santos' cell was at the end of the corridor. A single bulb hung outside, casting weak yellow light across the bars. Inside, Emily could see a figure kneeling on the floor, hands clasped, lips moving in silent prayer. "She's been like that for 6 hours, Officer Reeves whispered. "Hasn't eaten. Hasn't slept. Just praying." Warden Greaves nodded to Emily. "You're on." Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to run, to do anything but what she was about to do. But she thought of her own parole hearing, still 18 months away. She thought of freedom, of sunlight, of a life that didn't smell like disinfectant and despair. She stepped forward. The guard unlocked the cell door. The sound made Maria Santos look up. Their eyes met. Maria Santos was younger than Emily expected. Perhaps 35, with dark hair streaked with premature gray and eyes that held oceans of exhaustion. Her face was tear-stained, her prison uniform wrinkled, her bare feet pressed against the cold concrete. When she saw Emily in the blue robe and white veil, her expression transformed. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened in a silent gasp. Her hands, still clasped in prayer, began to shake. Santa Maria, Maria whispered, her voice breaking on the words. Madre de Dios. Emily stood frozen. She didn't speak Spanish, but she understood enough. Holy Mary, Mother of God. Maria rose to her feet, moving slowly, reverently, as if sudden movement might shatter the vision before her. Tears streamed down her face, catching the yellow light. You came, Maria said in heavily accented English. I prayed and you came. Emily's throat constricted. She wanted to speak, to tell the truth, to end this cruel charade. But Warden Greaves stood just outside the cell, watching. Officer Reeves had her hand on her baton. Chaplain Morrison's expression was blank, professional, utterly devoid of moral conflict. Emily began, her voice barely audible. Maria sank to her knees again, this time facing Emily. Please, I need to know. I need to know if God can forgive me. I need to know if there's any mercy left in heaven for someone like me. The words hit Emily like physical blows. She looked at Maria Santos, this woman who had killed 3 people, who had destroyed lives, who was about to die for her crimes, and saw something she recognized. Desperation. The same desperation Emily felt every day in this place. The desperate need to believe that you were more than your worst moment. Emily took a breath. Then another. She thought of every Sunday service she'd attended in the prison chapel, every Bible passage she'd heard read aloud, every prayer she'd whispered into her pillow at night. God's mercy, Emily said slowly, her voice trembling, is greater than our understanding. Maria's sob was raw, primal. But what I did, the people I hurt, their families. Forgiveness isn't earned. It's given. Emily surprised herself with the words. She wasn't sure if she believed them, but they felt true in this moment, in this cell, with this dying woman before her. I'm so afraid, Maria whispered. I'm so afraid of what comes next. Of judgment. Of hell. Of nothingness. Emily moved closer, kneeling so they were face to face. Behind her, she heard Warden Greaves shift his weight, heard Officer Reeves clear her throat. But she didn't care anymore. This wasn't about them. This was about the woman in front of her, who had hours left to exist. What happened? Emily asked quietly. Why did you do it? The question broke protocol. She was supposed to be serene, distant, divine. But she was just Emily Dawson, inmate, trying to understand how someone arrives at their final moments. Maria's face crumpled. My daughter. They took my daughter. The men they were trafficking, you understand? Taking girls. I found out where they were keeping the children. I went there. I had a gun. I just wanted to get her back. But they fought me and I killed them. All 3. And when the police came, they found drugs, they found evidence of other crimes, but they also found me with the gun and the bodies. I went to trial. The judge said I was a murderer. Self-defense didn't matter because I came armed. Premeditation, they said. Emily's breath left her. Your daughter? Safe. With my sister. She's 15 now. I haven't seen her in 8 years. The silence that followed was profound. Emily felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest, on her soul. This wasn't a simple story of good and evil. This was complicated, messy, human. Will she remember me? Maria asked, tears falling freely now. Or will she only remember that her mother is a murderer on death row? Emily reached out, slowly, carefully, and took Maria's hands in hers. They were cold, trembling. Human. She'll remember that you loved her enough to risk everything, Emily said. She'll remember that you fought for her. That you didn't abandon her. How do you know? Maria's voice was desperate, seeking reassurance from what she believed was a holy vision. Because that kind of love doesn't disappear. It stays. It marks everything. She'll carry it with her always. Maria closed her eyes, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I was so afraid to die alone, without some sign that I wasn't beyond redemption. Emily's own eyes burned with unshed tears. She wanted to tell Maria the truth, that she wasn't the Virgin Mary, that she was just another inmate in a costume, that this was all a calculated manipulation by the prison administration. But looking at Maria's face, at the peace beginning to settle over her features, Emily realized something that made her stomach turn. The lie was more merciful than the truth. You're not alone, Emily said instead. You were never alone. Maria nodded, her breathing beginning to steady. She looked at Emily with such profound gratitude, such complete belief, that Emily felt something break inside her chest. Will you stay with me? Until it's time? Emily glanced back at Warden Greaves. He nodded almost imperceptibly. I'll stay, Emily said. They sat together in that cell for 2.5 hours. Maria talked about her childhood in Mexico, about coming to America, about her daughter's first steps, first words, first day of school. She talked about the moment she realized her daughter was in danger, about the desperate, terrible choice she made. She talked about regret, about love, about faith. Emily mostly listened. Sometimes she offered comfort, a hand squeeze, a quiet affirmation. She stopped trying to maintain the illusion of divinity and simply became present, witness to a life about to end. As 5:45 a.m. approached, Officer Reeves appeared at the cell door. It's time. Maria stood. She looked at Emily one last time, her face now calm, almost serene. Thank you for giving me peace. Tell my daughter. Tell her I love her. That I never stopped loving her. Emily's voice broke. She knows. They led Maria away. Emily watched her walk down the corridor, steady steps, head held high, no longer trembling. At the final door, Maria turned back and smiled. It was a sad smile, but genuine. Then she was gone. Emily stood alone in the cell, still wearing the blue robe and white veil. Her legs felt weak. Her heart felt shattered. Warden Greaves approached. Good work, Dawson. You did what needed to be done. Emily looked at him. Did I? She died peacefully. That's more than most get. She died believing a lie. She died believing in mercy. Does it matter if the messenger was real? Greaves' tone was matter-of-fact, almost philosophical. You gave her what she needed. Sometimes that's all we can do in a place like this. Emily removed the veil, then the robe. Underneath, her prison uniform was damp with sweat. She felt dirty, complicit, changed. Back to your cell, Officer Reeves said. And remember. I know. This never happened. Emily walked back through the prison alone. Dawn was breaking through the high windows, painting the concrete walls in shades of gray and gold. Around her, the facility was waking up. The clatter of breakfast trays, the shuffle of feet, the daily resurrection of routine. She returned to her cell. Her cellmate, Diane, was still asleep, snoring softly in the bunk above. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. But Emily was different. She sat on her bunk and stared at her hands. These hands that had held Maria Santos' hands. These hands that had offered comfort under false pretenses. These hands that had helped a woman walk peacefully to her death. Were they blessed or cursed? She didn't know. Days passed. Emily returned to her routine, kitchen duty, yard time, chapel services. She didn't speak about what happened. Not to Diane, not to the other inmates, not even to herself in the quiet moments before sleep. But 2 weeks later something arrived. A letter. It wasn't addressed to Emily directly. It couldn't be, since officially, Emily Dawson had never entered Maria Santos' cell that night. Instead, it was addressed to the chapel, general delivery, marked for the attention of anyone who knew Maria Santos. Officer Reeves brought it to her during yard time, sliding it across the table where Emily sat alone, away from the other inmates. This is off the books, Reeves said quietly. Warden doesn't know about it. I'm giving it to you because you should see it. Emily's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in careful, looping handwriting. To the woman who gave my aunt peace. My name is Isabella. I am Maria Santos' daughter. I don't know who you are or if you'll ever read this, but I wanted to thank you. The prison chaplain told me that in my aunt's final hours, she received a visit that brought her peace. He wouldn't say more, but I know my aunt. I know she prayed for the Virgin Mary to appear to her. I know she needed to believe that forgiveness was possible. I'm 15 now. I remember my mother, not as a murderer, but as someone who loved me so much she was willing to destroy her own life to save mine. The men she killed were monsters. What she did was terrible and wrong, but I understand why she did it. I carry her love with me every day. I feel it in my bones. It marks everything I do. Whoever you are, whatever you said to her in those final hours, it mattered. She died knowing she was loved. She died believing in mercy. Thank you for that gift. Thank you for being there when she needed someone most. With gratitude, Isabella Santos. Emily read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Around her, the yard continued its daily chaos. Inmates arguing, guards watching, the sun beating down on concrete and razor wire. But Emily was somewhere else entirely. She thought about lies and truth. About mercy and justice. About the complicated, messy ways we try to redeem ourselves and each other in a world that offers precious few second chances. Had what she'd done been right? She still didn't know. But Isabella's letter suggested that maybe, it had been necessary. That sometimes the kindest thing we can do is hold someone's hand as they walk into darkness, even if the hand doing the holding is imperfect, unworthy, human. Emily folded the letter carefully and placed it in her pocket, close to her heart. That night in her cell, she whispered a prayer, not to the Virgin Mary, not to God, not to any holy figure. Just to Maria Santos, wherever she was now. I hope you found the peace you were looking for. I hope Isabella remembers you the way you deserve to be remembered. And I hope someday I can forgive myself for the role I played in your final moments. The prayer went unanswered. But Emily felt something shift inside her. A weight she didn't know she was carrying began to lift, just slightly. She had 18 months left until her parole hearing. 18 months to figure out who she would be when she walked out of Redmont. Would she be the woman who lied to a dying prisoner? Or would she be the woman who offered mercy when it was desperately needed? Maybe Emily realized she would be both. Maybe we're all both, broken and whole, complicit and compassionate, lost and seeking. The prison lights dimmed for the night. In the darkness, Emily closed her eyes and tried to sleep, carrying the weight of one woman's final hours and another woman's gratitude, trying to make sense of what it means to be human in a place designed to strip humanity away. Outside her window, stars appeared in the narrow slice of sky visible between razor wire and concrete. They shone indifferently, bearing witness to the complicated truths we carry, the lies we tell, and the mercies, small and imperfect, that sometimes keep us alive.